In the fall of 2024, the most elite dessert manufacturers gathered in Florence, Italy for the International Ice Cream Consortium. This event is a massive proving ground for the global dairy industry. Products are evaluated through a strict series of blind taste tests, forcing the panel of judges to score entries based purely on texture, ingredient quality, and flavor profile. The format completely strips away the influence of marketing budgets and brand recognition. When it came time to announce the winner for the best caramel ice cream in the world, the top prize went to Chapman's Ice Cream, a family-owned company operating out of Markdale, Ontario. The victorious flavor was their salty caramel crunch, a recipe anchored by a rich salty caramel base featuring a thick ribbon of salty caramel sauce cut right through the middle and folded with buttered toffee pieces alongside a heavy caramel cookie crunch. Engineering this award-winning treat, capable of beating European artisans on a global stage, required an obsessive level of trial and error back home in Markdale. The culinary team threw out batch after batch, grinding through 33 distinct iterations to finalize the exact profile. Seeing a small Canadian brand travel to Italy and defeat European artisans highlights a massive anomaly in the modern dairy industry. The global ice cream market is a heavily consolidated space, valued at nearly $98 billion and projected to reach over $138 billion by 2031. It's dominated by international conglomerates like Unilever and Nestle, who rely on immense standardization and massive global supply chains to control the freezer aisle. Today, Chapman's is the largest independent ice cream manufacturer in Canada. For half a century, they've operated in a market entirely controlled by multinational behemoths, surviving only because they refused to sell out or compromise their local manufacturing standards. But building an independent brand capable of fighting billion-dollar empires and winning international gold doesn't happen by accident. It started quietly, exactly 50 years earlier. The foundation of this independent giant started in the late 1960s. David and Penny Chapman were a young couple trying to build a life from scratch. David had immigrated to Canada in 1967, and after meeting and marrying Penny, the two began looking for an opportunity to build a business of their own. Deciding to take a massive personal and financial risk, they targeted the highly volatile food manufacturing industry. So, in 1973, the young couple packed up and moved to Markdale, an unassuming village located just south of Georgian Bay. But starting a dairy company from scratch in Canada comes with a massive logistical hurdle. You can't simply build a factory and buy industrial quantities of milk on the open market. The entire industry operates under a tightly controlled quota system, meaning you must hold the legal rights to purchase raw dairy. To bypass this restriction and secure their supply chain, David and Penny purchased an old, existing local business called the Maypole Dairy. Acquiring that specific creamery transferred an established milk supply into their name at a reasonable price. With their raw materials legally secured, they got to work. The initial operation was remarkably modest. The entire company consisted of just 4 employees utilizing 2 used delivery trucks. The Chapmans ignored the playbook entirely. They took a massive financial risk by launching a lineup of 15 distinct flavors, and they packaged every single one of them in stark black 2-liter boxes. The design choice immediately alienated supermarket buyers. The dairy industry relied heavily on light packaging, white or pastel backgrounds paired with bright logos, to visually signal pure milk and clean farming. A heavy black box sitting in a grocery store freezer broke every unwritten rule of retail marketing. Buyers were highly skeptical of stocking it, which meant the Chapmans had to win over people on actual product quality. They made a strict commitment to use 100% Canadian milk and cream for all their recipes, completely refusing to cut costs by using imported dairy or filler ingredients. This dedication to straightforward ingredients built enough consumer trust to finally convince grocery buyers to accept the unusual black boxes and give them permanent shelf space. As regional demand for their core product steadily increased throughout the 1980s, the leadership team initiated an expansion of their product catalog to capture entirely new demographics. They rolled out their first premium ice cream line in 1980, and recognizing a gap in the market for customers who couldn't consume traditional milk and cream, they entered the dairy-free space in 1985 with a sorbet product initially called Sorbetto. Then, in 1989, they introduced a dedicated line of frozen yogurt. Chapman's was the only ice cream manufacturer in the country producing frozen yogurt at the time, securing a massive market advantage and positioning themselves as the top-selling frozen yogurt brand nationwide. They carried this momentum into the 1990s, launching their first vanilla ice cream sandwich in 1994, which quickly became the most popular single-serve novelty across the country. To fuel their massive expansion, Chapman's built a dedicated flavor laboratory overseen by lead scientist Tammy Barrett. Scaling up ice cream production requires precise temperature control and the controlled mechanical incorporation of air. The liquid dairy is pumped into industrial continuous freezers, where a refrigerated barrel rapidly chills the mixture while an internal rotating dasher scrapes the freezing surface. This process incorporates air into the mix, influencing how scoopable the final product will be, and inclusions like chocolate chips or butter toffee are added near the end of the freezing, just before the ice cream fully solidifies. Chapman's currently produces roughly 53 million liters of ice cream annually, enough volume to fill over 21 Olympic swimming pools. Their raw materials are stored across a massive network of industrial holding tanks, supplying a catalogue of 286 different products, though staples like vanilla and black cherry remain their top sellers. Moving that volume of frozen dairy across Canada's geography requires an unbroken cold chain. Any temperature fluctuation during transport causes the ice cream to slightly melt and refreeze, forming unwanted ice crystals that completely ruin the engineered texture. To lock down their supply chain, Chapman's built a 140,000 square foot distribution center south of Markdale and later opened a secondary facility in New Brunswick to supply the Atlantic provinces. They operate a custom fleet of 50 heavy-duty refrigerated trucks that log over 3 million kilometers a year. Controlling their transport from coast to coast ensures their products reach freezers nationwide safely, completely bypassing the need for third-party logistics firms. By the late 1990s, Chapman's had successfully pushed their traditional ice cream into nearly every grocery store freezer across the country. But despite that massive national reach, there was a demographic of kids who still couldn't safely bring a single box into their homes. Penny Chapman received a letter from a 10-year-old boy who was suffering from a severe peanut allergy. He explained that he'd never been able to safely eat ice cream at his own birthday parties because standard dairy production facilities always carried a constant, dangerous risk of cross-contamination. If that 10-year-old had written to a multinational brand, the request would have died on somebody's desk. Shutting down a massive factory line just to accommodate a small fraction of buyers makes zero financial sense to corporate shareholders. But operating completely independently meant the Chapmans could pivot the entire company based on a single conversation. They immediately restructured their factory floor, and in 1999, they launched North America's first guaranteed peanut and nut-free ice cream line. They converted their foundational 2-liter boxed recipes to meet incredibly strict safety standards, and to ensure consumer safety at the retail level, they implemented clear red flag labeling on their packaging to help families managing anaphylaxis easily identify safe desserts. Catering to these severe dietary restrictions created a fiercely loyal demographic that the massive American competitors struggled to serve effectively. Chapman's capitalized on this momentum by expanding their specialized offerings, and they developed product lines explicitly formulated and marketed as lactose-free, gluten-free, egg-free, and containing zero added sugar. On September 4th, 2009, however, the company nearly lost its ability to produce these products when a crisis struck the Markdale facility. During the routine expansion of a state-of-the-art freezing tunnel, a welder's spark accidentally ignited a fire. Once a fire reaches industrial quantities of sugar and dairy fat, it becomes incredibly difficult to extinguish. The blaze quickly consumed the primary building, destroying 36 years of physical manufacturing infrastructure. While the main production floor was a total loss, the company was saved by their localized logistics network. The dry warehouse and their massive 140,000 square foot low temperature distribution center survived the fire intact, and because this was heavily stocked with ready to ship inventory, the company could continue supplying the Canadian retail market without interruption while they dealt with the immediate fallout. Following the destruction, David and Penny Chapman made the immediate decision to rebuild the factory to protect the local Markdale economy and secure the livelihoods of their 350 employees. They also committed to paying their entire staff their regular wages throughout the rebuilding process, ensuring the workforce survived the transition. At the same time, the company secured a temporary production facility and managed to manufacture its first 2-liter brick of ice cream just 7 weeks after the disaster. Concurrently, they broke ground on a massive new manufacturing facility appropriately named Phoenix. Exactly 1 year after the old plant was destroyed, on September 4th, 2010, the new facility officially opened its doors. Within 12 months, Chapman successfully rebuilt their operations to be significantly larger than before. The new Phoenix plant provided over 160,000 square feet of dedicated production space, making it nearly twice the size of their original factory. The disaster ultimately allowed the company to completely separate their manufacturing lines to guarantee product safety. The smaller, temporary plant was permanently converted into a dedicated facility for products containing nuts, while the massive new Phoenix plant was established as a strictly nut-free and peanut-free environment. This physical expansion secured their supply chain and allowed the company to hire up to 100 new employees to staff the upgraded production lines. The commitment the company showed its employees during the 2009 fire established a permanent baseline for their corporate strategy. They carried this exact approach into the global COVID-19 pandemic. When lockdowns fractured international supply chains and massive retail shutdowns triggered a wave of corporate layoffs across the country, Chapman's took the opposite approach. The company didn't lay off a single worker. They actually gave their employees immediate raises that they made permanent to help them navigate the sudden economic uncertainty. They also leveraged their specialized industrial infrastructure to directly assist the local healthcare system. During the initial rollout of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, which required extremely strong refrigeration for long-term storage, the local health infrastructure was overwhelmed. Chapman's volunteered the use of their massive industrial freezers to the Grey Bruce Health Unit, providing a secure facility to safely store the highly temperature-sensitive vials for the region. This pandemic response eventually brought intense public scrutiny to the company, though. The leadership team implemented a strict vaccine mandate for their workforce, requiring unvaccinated employees to submit company-paid rapid antigen testing twice a week. Vaccinated employees received a $1 raise as equivalent compensation for the cost of those tests. This triggered immediate backlash online, leading to an organized campaign calling for a national boycott of all Chapman's products. The online hostility was highly publicized, but it inadvertently triggered a massive wave of counter-support from other customers across Canada who rushed out to defend the brand. This opposing movement ultimately drowned out the boycott, and company vice president Ashley Chapman later confirmed that the campaign had no negative effect on the company's bottom line. While navigating these domestic challenges, Chapman's also had to shield their operations from international trade disputes. When US President Donald Trump announced 25% tariffs on goods imported from Canada, the company immediately restructured its supply chain. They deliberately stopped purchasing specific raw ingredients from the United States and began sourcing materials from other international markets, including Italy, as well as freezing their price for the rest of the calendar year and absorbing all the immediate cost increases associated with the tariffs. This last part ultimately cemented Chapman's reputation as a brand that puts Canadians first. Surviving fires and trade wars without compromising their values built an impenetrable wall of trust for many Canadians. That deep consumer trust gave the company the leverage it needed to finally challenge the American giants on their own turf. For decades, the high-end freezer aisle in Canada belonged entirely to imported brands like Häagen-Dazs and Ben & Jerry's. Chapman's had spent 50 years dominating the everyday family market with their standard boxes, largely leaving those expensive imported pints unchallenged. But as they approached their 50th anniversary in 2023, the company decided it was time to target that luxury space. They launched the Super Premium Plus line to compete directly with the American heavyweights. To match that high-end quality, they completely overhauled their recipe and cranked the butterfat content up to 16%. This created a significantly denser and richer product compared to their standard 10% base. The culinary team spent immense time perfecting the flavor profiles for this new luxury tier, and alongside their award-winning salty caramel crunch, they developed Vanilla Trilogy, a unique blend of vanilla beans imported directly from Madagascar, Tahiti, and Papua New Guinea. They formulated Cookie Jar using a brown butter ice cream base loaded with an oatmeal cookie crumble, chocolate cookie chunks, and raw cookie dough pieces. And during the same competition in Italy, where they won Best Caramel, they secured a silver medal for their cherry cheesecake ice cream. They took home a bronze medal in the most innovative category for their cold brew coffee flavor, and for that coffee profile, Chapman's collaborated with an indigenous company called Birch Bark Coffee to mix actual cold brew directly into the ice cream base instead of relying on standard coffee powder. They took it a step further next year, winning Best Ice Cream Maker of the Year, Most Innovative Ice Cream, and the Best Technical Solution Award, on top of winning second place for Best Vanilla Ice Cream and third place for the Best Overall Ice Cream. They also overhauled the physical packaging. They partnered with a Ukrainian design firm called 360 Branding, managed locally by Elena Fedorenko, who relocated to Canada due to the war, to create sustainably sourced, fully recyclable paper tubs. The physical size of those tubs represents a highly calculated financial strategy tied directly to Canadian tax law. Under the Canada Revenue Agency, basic household groceries are tax exempt. The government applies the goods and services tax to anything it classifies as a single-serve snack food. For frozen desserts, the strict legal cutoff is 500 millimeters. American dessert brands package their luxury ice cream in standard pint containers, which translates to 473 millimeters. Because of this measurement standard, Canadian consumers are forced to pay GST on those imported pints every time they reach the checkout counter. Chapman's engineered their new Super Premium Plus tubs to hold precisely 500 millimeters. By hitting that exact legal threshold, the product officially qualifies as a tax-exempt basic grocery. This structural design choice prevents the government from taxing the product as a snack, effectively lowering the final out-of-pocket cost for the consumer and giving the brand an immediate pricing advantage over the competition. While launching this luxury tier, they refused to abandon their foundational products. In an era where massive food conglomerates rely heavily on shrinkflation to quietly maintain profit margins, Chapman's made a deliberate choice during their 50th anniversary to keep their standard ice cream in its traditional 2-liter box. They redesigned the packaging and officially rebranded the line as Markdale Creamery, paying direct homage to the village where the operation began. They maintained their wide assortment of flavors and strict allergy-friendly standards without reducing the physical volume of the product, allowing families to rely on a safe, familiar dessert without feeling shortchanged at the checkout counter. Today, Chapman's operates with a massive workforce of around 850 employees running 3 shifts, 24 hours a day, 5 days a week. They produce over 280 different frozen treats and serve as a massive economic anchor for their community. They completely rejected the temptation of corporate buyouts and instead built a lasting legacy by focusing entirely on the Canadian customer. But what's your take on Chapman's today? Are they still holding their ground as the best Canadian ice cream? Or have the American giants finally won you over? Have you tried their new Super Premium Plus line? Or are you strictly a Markdale Creamery vanilla kind of person? And what do you think of the company during COVID? Were they too strict, or were the measures for workers appropriate? Drop all that and more in the comments section below. I always love reading them, guys. And as always, thank you so much for watching and stay curious.